January 30th, 1945, Gotenhafen, a name that becomes the last hope for tens of thousands of souls. The air is razor sharp, minus 18 degrees Celsius. Every breath feels like ice in the lungs. Outside in the snow-covered forests of East Prussia, the world is collapsing. The Red Army has shattered the defensive lines. Nemmersdorf was only the beginning. Reports of the merciless retaliation of Soviet soldiers spread like wildfire. It is no longer just a flight. It is the naked, primal fear of annihilation. The land route to the west? Severed. The only rescue lies in the east, in a black, freezing Baltic Sea. And there she waits, the Wilhelm Gustloff, once the flagship of the Strength Through Joy organization, now a gray, neglected colossus in war service. But behind the facade of a refugee ship lies the true strategic mission of this vessel. Since 1940, the Gustloff has served the 2nd U-Boat Training Division as a floating barracks. On this day, the military order from the Naval High Command is clear. Over 1,000 highly trained U-boat specialists must be evacuated to the west. Commanders, engineers, radio operators, men meant to be the backbone of the new generation of Type 21 boats. To the Nazi regime, these men are more valuable than gold. They are the last, desperate hope for the U-boat war in the Atlantic. The red thread of this journey is not a humanitarian act. It is the rescue of a military elite. The civilians on board are merely the background noise of an operation of the highest strategic priority for the leadership in Berlin. Without these men, the German U-boat arm ceases to exist. The Gustloff carries the last bullet of the naval command. At the pier of Gotenhafen, these worlds collide with brutal force. Thousands of refugees camp in the snow, some for days. Mothers hold their children tightly to prevent them from freezing. When the gangways finally open, order collapses. Women throw their infants onto the decks, hoping a stranger's hand will catch them. Families are separated forever in the murderous crush. People are pushed from the pier into the freezing water, squeezed between the hull and the concrete. Anyone who lands there dies silently in the black harbor mud. No one helps, no one looks. The official passenger list? A worthless piece of paper. While formal documents count around 6,000 people, the reality is a logistical nightmare. Over 10,000 people are packed into every corner of the ship. They stand in the magnificent ballrooms, lie in the corridors, and huddle in the drained swimming pool on Deck E. The Gustloff has become an overloaded ark, sitting dangerously low in the water even before leaving the harbor. Every stairway, every storage room is filled with human fear. The ship already groans under the weight of those it is supposed to save. Around noon, the hull trembles, the lines fall. The Wilhelm Gustloff slowly pushes away from the pier. At her side is her only protection, the small torpedo boat Lova, originally a Norwegian ship, old, underarmed, and completely inadequate for this mission. A second escort ship, the Hansa, had to remain in port due to engine failure. The Gustloff is on her own, a 200-meter-long target protected by a boat barely larger than one of her own lifeboats. On the bridge, the poison of disagreement simmers. 4 captains share command, 1 military commander and 3 civilian captains. A clash of authority that decides life or death. Captain Peterson, an experienced civilian sailor, sees the Gustloff as his ship, a civilian object to be protected. Opposite him stands Wilhelm Zahn, the military commander of the U-Boat Training Division. For Zahn, the Gustloff is not a refugee ship, but a troop transport. He knows that the 1,000 U-boat men below deck are the only reason this ship received coal and escort protection at all. The dispute erupts over the sea chart. Zahn demands a complete blackout of all lights and a zigzag course near the coast. He thinks like a hunter. He knows how Soviet captains think. But Peterson fears running aground in the shallow waters off Pomerania more than Soviet torpedoes. He insists on his authority. The result is a compromise that becomes a death sentence. The deep route, but at a reduced speed to protect the overloaded engines. Every minute they travel slower gives the danger more time. The captains navigate not only through the ice, but through a thicket of vanity and jurisdictional disputes. Around 6 p.m., an anonymous radio message reaches the bridge, a warning of a German minesweeper convoy allegedly on a direct collision course in the darkness. Peterson, fearing a disaster in the blinding snowstorm, makes a fatal decision. He orders the red and green position lights to be turned on. It is an error of world historical proportions. The reported convoy does not exist. To this day, it remains unclear who sent that signal. But at that moment, the Gustloff lights up like a signal fire in the pitch-black night. She screams her position into the darkness. The Loa, struggling with heavy seas and freezing spray, does not notice the silent hunter. In the darkness of the Baltic Sea waits S-13, a Stalinres-class Soviet submarine. Its commander, Alexander Marinesko, is a man under extreme pressure. He has fallen into disgrace with his superiors. He needs a spectacular victory to save his life and rank. He is an outcast in search of redemption through destruction. When he sees the Gustloff's lights on the horizon, he knows this is his prey. This is his way back to glory. Marinesko shows a tactical brilliance as ruthless as it is effective. He chooses the land maneuver. He steers his submarine between the Gustloff and the Pomeranian coast. He maneuvers into shallow, dangerous water where German sonar operators would never expect an attack. Marinesko exploits the blindness of the German defense. He is a shadow creeping unnoticed toward the throat of his prey. For over 2 hours, he follows the liner. He hears the thumping of the giant engines through the hydrophone. He calculates the speed of the opponent. 10,000 people are in the crosshairs of a man who has nothing left to lose. Marinesko has tubes 1 through 4 flooded. On the first torpedo, "For the Fatherland" is written in chalk. On the second, "For the Soviet people." On the third, "For Leningrad." The perfect catch is ready. At 9 p.m., Hitler's final radio speech drones across the ship. Passengers hear his rasping voice, his hollow promises of final victory. It is the voice of a man leading an entire nation into the abyss. But in the belly of the Gustloff, no one believes in miracles anymore. While the dictator's voice fills the crowded halls, Marinesko has locked onto his target. At 9:08 p.m., he gives the order. Fire! 3 torpedoes race through the freezing water. 3 hits that seal the Gustloff's fate. The fate of the U-boat specialists. The fate of the 5,000 children. The first torpedo strikes the bow. The second detonates under the drained swimming pool. Tiles and glass turn into deadly projectiles. Almost all the women die in the first second. The third torpedo tears open the engine room. The generators die. Hitler's speech stops mid-sentence. Total darkness falls. Only the roar of the water remains. The scene on board is a descent into the deepest circles of hell. Outside, it is minus 18 degrees. The cold is now the executioner. On the upper decks, a hopeless struggle begins. The lifeboats are frozen in their davits, encased in centimeters of thick ice. Desperate men try to smash the brackets with axes, but the metal does not give way. It is a struggle against frozen time. In the chaos, some boats are lowered too quickly. They fall uncontrollably into the depths, crushing people already floating in the water. In the corridors, an animalistic struggle for survival erupts. The strong trample the weak. Parents lose their grip on their children's hands in the black void. Hundreds are trapped in the lower sections because the automatic bulkheads were closed to delay the ship's sinking. They drown behind massive steel doors that will never open again. Their hammering against the steel can be heard until the water fills their lungs. It is a steel grave even before the ship reaches the bottom. In sheer desperation, thousands jump directly into the 4-degree Baltic Sea. The cold shock is so intense that many suffer cardiac arrest upon impact. Those who survive the jump find themselves in a thick layer of ice and corpses. You see mothers holding their infants above the water with their last strength until their arms freeze in the wind and the little ones slide into the black depths. It is the end of all hope. After only about 60 minutes, it is over. The Wilhelm Gustloff disappears beneath the surface. A massive suction pulls hundreds more people into the abyss. What remains is a ghostly silence, broken only by the whimpering of those slowly turning into ice pillars in their life jackets. Of the over 10,000 people, only 1,000 to 252 are rescued alive. The U-boat specialists, the regime's last hope, lie on the bottom of the sea. The mission has failed. The Atlantic now belongs definitively to the Allies. The sinking of the Wilhelm Gustloff was not an isolated accident. It was the moment the Operation Hannibal, the largest evacuation mission in world history, lost its innocence. Over 2 million people were rescued across the Baltic Sea, but the price the Gustloff paid deprived the German resistance in the Atlantic of its last substance. With the 1,000 U-boat specialists at the bottom of the Stolpebank, the last theoretical chance for the Navy to seriously disrupt Allied supplies died as well. The strategic mission ended in an inferno. When the Titanic sank in 1912, about 1,500 people died, a tragedy that still shapes global consciousness today. But on that January night off the Pomeranian coast, over 9,000 people lost their lives. There were 6 times more victims than on the Titanic, lost in a fraction of the time. Among the dead were an estimated 5,000 children. These numbers mark the peak of a humanitarian collapse. The Gustloff was no ordinary ship. She was a floating fragment of a falling empire. A ship built to bring relaxation to the German worker became a coffin for a technological elite and tens of thousands of innocents alike. The wreck of the Gustloff on the bottom of the Stolpebank is now an official war grave. It is a place that calls for objective reflection and unmistakably documents the costs of total war. The tragedy remains a deep trauma of the Baltic Sea, an hour of total darkness in which the lines between military necessity and human catastrophe blurred irrevocably. The Wilhelm Gustloff remains the sea's deadliest memorial, the darkest hour of seafaring, a pain that never heals.